Hi people, Ray from back here again. This is going to be episode 3, if you will, of story time. And I'm going to try to keep videos short. I also didn't like the fact that I noticed that people didn't like the fact that the last video, didn't like it, no one expressed it, but I for one don't like it when videos are too long. And the last video I did, the lady at Paulus Creek, I didn't like the fact that that video was half an hour, but there was nothing I can do about that. Some videos simply can't be shortened. In any case, in this third episode, I'm going to discuss a phenomenon. Before I continue, I have to state that I can't find any documentative accounts of this occult phenomenon or this haunting being global. Okay, so it is most likely the fact that it's global, but it's known by different names. But in any case, I tried to look it up and I didn't find any results whatsoever. I'm going to discuss a local phenomenon that is known as the dead burying their dead, or it's known locally in the Surinamese tongue as Yorka Beri. Yorka simply means spirit. It's a phrase that Negroes use locally to refer to a type of spirit. They're all spirits, but basically drifter spirits, or it can also be used to emphasize a dead person with, generally speaking, with malevolent intentions. And bury simply means burial. So yeah, roughly translated, it translates to the dead that bury their own dead. And that is exactly how it appears. Nowadays, you won't find it anymore due to the fact that society is modernized. Like I said, spirits are more nocturnal. So spirits, generally speaking, retreat. Most of them have either retreated to the jungle or they hide in dark areas and whatnot. Some are still active, but bottom line is that you won't get as many documented cases or occurrences where people state that they've come into contact with a spirit that bothered them, or some kind of malevolent entity when roaming the streets or similar. But bottom line is that back in the day, in the 60s and the 50s, locally there was no electricity, like I mentioned in my previous video. So, you had to be inside the house when it started getting dark, after sunset, because literally all the boogeymen and boogeywomen came out. All the spirits pretty much came out whenever the sun set, and it was more of a vampiric theme that they had going on. The second it became dark, aside from the fact that your chances of coming across a spirit would be moderately high, relatively speaking, you wouldn't be able to see a single thing unless you walked with an oil lamp or any light source, any artificial light source. Even with the moon, it would still be hard to see. Anyone that has experienced a blackout knows what I'm talking about. When, for example, the power company fails and there's some kind of disturbance, electrical disturbance, you literally can't see a single thing. Just try turning all the lights in your house out and all the windows are shut to the point where no light comes in. You literally can't see a single thing. You can put your hand in front of your face and you won't be able to see your own hand. In any case, this is also a ghostly phenomenon. Like I said, it's known locally as Yorka Beri, and it translates to the dead that bury their own dead. The way that this phenomenon occurs is, or the appearance-wise, is of a group of well-dressed black people in general carrying torches. These people don't always have to be visible, but the torches, generally speaking, are. And these people don't always have to be black, so Negroes, they don't always have to be black people, but that is generally the case. And they're all dressed in a cultural way, basically well dressed in their own the same way that their forefathers and their ancestors used to dress. And they sometimes festively go to bury their dead, and you have a coffin that's also present. You have people carrying a coffin. That's why the phrase is called the dead that bury their own dead. What you're basically seeing are dead people that are literally off to bury another dead person. And in any case, back in the day when you had a realistic chance of seeing one of these, or the chances of seeing one of these things was was more common. The elderly warned people, the elderly warned their offspring, so if you will, that it was simply an oral transferal of life lessons, and they always had the saying, when you see something like that, if you see the dead burying their own dead, always find a place to hide. Don't allow them to see you, because if they see you, they might kill you. And yeah, that is generally the case. That was one of the most dangerous hauntings back in the day. Nowadays, your chances of seeing something like that is also present, but it's less likely. In any case, it's still one of the most dangerous based on the sources that I've read upon. It's still one of the most dangerous forms of hauntings to see. Whereas if you simply see a spirit across the road, that spirit might try to mess with you, but a Yorka Beri is very dangerous, in the sense that these dead people that are off to bury their own dead, they seriously might kill you, and they usually do so by twisting your entire neck to the point where your face will literally be completely twisted backwards, and your neck will be twisted backwards to the point where your face is pointing in the opposite direction. And usually your eyes will also be glazed over, as in you won't be able to see your pupils. People will not be able to see your pupils when inspecting your body, etc. And yeah, that is basically what it looks like. The thumbnail that I placed for this video is what such a burial, generally speaking, looks like. Okay, blacks that like to do things the cultural way, blacks that bury their dead in a more conventional way, they dress like that in general. It basically looks like the men being well dressed in suits and tuxedos and whatnot, sometimes very colorful. It can be anything from green to purple, you name it. A variety of colors are present. And with the women, they also wore the same cultural wear that their ancestors used to wear back in the days of slavery, before slavery was abolished, of course, consisting of a large colorful gown and colorful headdress and whatnot, you name it. This is the case globally often too. I think they also have it in places like Haiti and whatnot. In any case, that is it. And last but not least, I'm going to close off with now you're familiar with the phenomenon, and I am going to close off with a funny but tragic tale, that is confirmed. And it took place years ago. I don't know exactly how long ago, I think a decade ago or 15 years ago. And it's in the exact same region, the exact same neighborhood that I live in, more or less, or at the very least the exact same district I live in. And the story, long story short, was about a woman, an Indian woman, so a Hindu woman, that liked to pester people by sitting at a window in her house or in her family's house, and she yelled a bunch of annoying things to people that passed by. So she yelled slurs and whatnot at passers-by, and she used to do it even late at night. And for her, unfortunately for her, too bad for her, one day one of those things came by. So you basically had a Yorka Beri, or the dead burying their own dead, pass by her house late at night, I think 10 or 11 a.m., something along those lines. It could be later. And she wasn't aware of the fact that it was that these weren't living people. She thought it was simply a normal burial, a normal cultural parade where people went to bury someone that died of theirs. But she wasn't aware of the fact that it was that. And she jokingly yelled, "Who are you guys gonna bury? Who are you busy burying?" And the dead people yelled at her, "We're going to bury you." Yeah, this made me laugh when I read upon it. But yeah, that woman did indeed die. She died exactly 2 days later. So yeah, in hindsight or in retrospect, they were indeed going to bury her. They weren't joking around, and in a way it serves that woman right for being so annoying. She literally got what came to her, but it cost her life. In any case, now you're familiar with the phenomenon Yorka Beri. That's what it's called locally. It's simply a haunting in which the dead bury their own dead in a cultural and traditional way. And it's still a very frightening and It can be a very frightening and terrifying thing to see. Not that I've ever seen it, but other sources have also claimed, confirmed sources, that the dead aren't always visible. Like I said, sometimes you'll just see, for example, 10 torches walking past with one main torch, the leader walking out in front, and the casket floating in mid-air. And yeah, if you just imagine, seriously imagine seeing something like that, you can imagine how terrifying the sight of seeing something like that alone is, let alone having them attack you. And yeah, in any case, this is a very dangerous sighting because these guys can kill you. And yeah, one last thing that I'm going to mention, the very last thing too, is that this can also be used as a magical attack. One other source that I read upon stated that this can also be used as a magical attack, and it allegedly involves someone that wants to hex someone else. So basically a magician that wants to cast a black magic spell over someone else, goes to a graveyard and then sleeps there or resides there for a week, and he calls upon that person after that person until he has a Yorka Beri, if you will, until he has that, and he basically directs it at his target, his or her target, and yeah, these guys will come to kill you in the story. That one is less likely, okay, because I can only find one source on it, and that source also stated that you really need to be a skilled magician, and you really need to have an adequate level or an above adequate level of protection to be able to withstand such an attack, basically a Yorka Beri attack. So that's it in any case on this phenomenon. Thanks for watching. Bye.